I'm curious what it's been like for you so far reading the Bhagavad Gita. Have there been, thumbs up. Has there been something that's particularly struck you so far while you were reading this section? Or that you like about it or that resonates with you? Oh, the gurus. Yeah, that was a nice part, really relevant. Anything else that comes to mind? Remember? Okay, so we'll continue the discussion. Actually, this is such a beautiful section of the Bhagavatam, this discussion between Krishna and Uddhava. It's very intimate and loving. And you can sense that Krishna has a lot of love for Uddhava, and Uddhava has a lot of love for Krishna. And you'll see in a few verses, actually, I think 3 times you'll hear the word love in the next verses that we'll read. And I think it's maybe a little bit unusual. This first one, we'll start with verse 26, that we hear a lot about the love of Krishna and his devotees, but to actually hear in the text, see if it strikes you as interesting. Uddhava actually says, I love you to Krishna. And it struck me because we don't often see it written out exactly in that way, in that form. But it was very nice, because we want to have that. We want to say, Krishna, I love you. That's really, at the end of the day, we want to have that love. So what we'll do is, and we're going to go a little bit back and forth, but I'll tell you as I go. We'll come back to the big verse, because there's one massive one. You know how they sometimes put together a bunch of huge text this long. So, text 26. Sri Uddhava said, and let's see, someone could read this one? Yes, please.
Sri Uddhava said, My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, what type of person do you consider to be a true devotee? And what type of devotional service is approved by great devotees as worthy of being offered to your Lordship? My dear ruler of the universal controllers, O Lord of Vaikuntha and Almighty God of the universe, I am your devotee, and because I love you, I have no other shelter than you. Therefore, please explain this to me.
So, really good question. Does it remind you of another question that was asked at a different time? By another devotee to Krishna? Yeah, Arjuna. You'll see a lot of parallels in this section between this and Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna asked Krishna, can you describe to me somebody who's self-realized? How do they walk? How do they move? What do they like? And so there's similarity here, trying to understand, how do I recognize a true devotee? What does that look like? And why do you think that's an important question? Why is it important to know who's a devotee, how to recognize one? Why is that important? Yes. Yeah, because devotees can give us Krishna, and I think even in this purport, anyway, at some point says that the devotees have Krishna so they can give him to us, give him to us. So yeah, so we need to recognize those devotees because that's really how we're going to deepen our own spiritual life, right? I was last week at the Sadhu Sangha in Dallas, and Sarga Prabhu was there. Was anybody else there? Yeah, and the live stream wasn't really working, so, oh yeah, Dallas. So, yeah, the whole purpose of that event, Sadhu Sangha, to gather with others who are like-minded sadhus, those who are able to see through, like cut through things and get to the essence. And to be in that Sangha is really powerful. It's really transformative. Even if we're not that inclined to our own spiritual life, if we're feeling, there's a word, a really nice English word, lackadaisical, kind of, just lazy, sort of not really interested. Even in that kind of frame of mind, if we put ourselves in that Sangha, it will enliven us. Even if we don't even really want it necessarily, it comes to us because we're in that association. It's so powerful that we sort of absorb it. And I noticed that when I was there, that it was just, there were so many people. There was close to 3,000 this time. It was a huge event. When it first started, it was like 300. It was a small gathering, relatively. And I think you were there in one of the early ones, right? Yeah. So it was very first one, yeah, in Texas. So yeah, it was definitely expanded. And I think that Sri Sagar would also agree that it was just really powerful to be with so many devotees. And everyone's is there for the same purpose of wanting to glorify Krishna and wanting to speak about Krishna, sing about Krishna, dance for Krishna, talk about Krishna, and all these things. So that is, he wants to know, Krishna, who do you consider to be a true devotee? That way I can search those people out and spend time with them, and that way I'll feel close to you, right? So here in the last sentence, he says, I'm your devotee, and because I love you, I have no other shelter than you. I just liked that phrase. That was very intimate, very sweet. So then the next text, please.
My dear Lord, as the absolute truth, you are transcendental to material nature, and like the sky, you are never entangled in any way. Still, being controlled by your devotee's love, you accept many different forms, incarnation according to your devotee's desire.
So, this is also a nice one. He's saying again the word love. You are controlled by your devotee's love. So we know in that famous pastime that we meditate on in November, usually, sometime October, November, Kartik time, where Krishna was bound by his mother, the ropes of her love, that story. And in that famous verse that we sing, that poet describes that Krishna nothing can control Krishna except the love of his devotee, and that's what can actually control Krishna. So he's controlled by his devotee's love. And he's so personal, Krishna's so personal, we can get insight into what his nature is like, that he actually will take different forms according to what the devotee desires. How personal, right? And how lucky for us that Krishna reciprocates in that way. So we're not having to engage with someone we don't relate to. He actually completely accommodates himself according to our desires so that we can relate with him and can have that loving relationship. So that's how personal Krishna is. Another note about this one, because someone might think, well, he's like the vast sky, but then he takes these forms. So someone might think, and actually, there are many people who read the Uddhava Gita, and even though it's such a personal interaction between the Lord and his devotee, they can read it through that impersonal lens. So this happens, there's even a group in Maysville that does this, or in the Alachua area. They read the Uddhava Gita, but through the lens of kind of an impersonalist approach. So So yeah, it's amazing how that can be, if you really want to do that, you can do that, but because this is such a deep, hidden subject, Krishna, in its most personal form, that sometimes people stay at the Brahman kind of, it's all one, it's all the light and all that. So they might think, well, he's saying here that Krishna's like the sky, right? Like he's the vast sky. You're never entangled anyway, but then you take the form. So they might use that as like an impersonal explanation. So in the purport, the last paragraph, he says, Krishna says, and Jiva Goswami actually, he mentions that the word Vyoma, the sky, someone might misinterpret this to mean that Lord Krishna is impersonal, like the material sky, or that the form of Krishna is merely another selected incarnation equal to any other. Such casual and whimsical speculations cannot be accepted as spiritual knowledge. Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and the Lord has explained elaborately and many times, over and over in Bhagavad Gita, that he is the original source of everything. So I like how these great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and the different devotees who write on these verses, they're always fighting for that explanation that yes, actually Krishna is a person. He's not just a vast sky and then takes a form just to accommodate us, but he has his own body, his own nature, his own form. So that's important to remember. And in this particular form, Uddhava is relating to him because he loves this form of Krishna. And they're actually cousins, and they're related as well. So they're cousins, yeah? Somehow, okay. Yeah, so I forget how they're, do you remember how they're cousins? Anyway, it's some connection there. Okay, so maybe Vasudeva, through Vasudeva. Yeah. So then we'll just skip to 33 and we'll do and then we'll come back, okay? So text 33, we'll do the Sanskrit. This is Krishna's response. And again, for the third time, love is mentioned. So you'll see here. Just go to the translation for a minute. Okay. My devotees may or may not know exactly what I am, who I am, and how I exist. But if they worship me with unalloyed love, then I consider them to be the best of devotees. And this is similar to some also Bhagavad Gita verses. There's a couple of verses that are very similar, even in some of the Sanskrit words. So it's nice that he's saying here, you don't even have to fully understand me. They may not know exactly what I am or how I exist. But if you just have that love, then he considers you the best of his devotees. So this kind of cuts through, this verse cuts through this idea that we have to be a super brain or like understand something so philosophically in order to gain Krishna's approval. Krishna's not, he's not, like you'll have a teacher that, let's say for example, there's a teacher and they'll gravitate to the one student who seems to like intellectually connect with them, and then that's the idea that comes from the teacher's pet, right? The kind of the person that they really resonate with, and like, oh, that student really stands out to them intellectually and it's doing well academically. Then they might favor that student. But Krishna is not, he doesn't favor just because someone's philosophical. He wants also this love. So it's more than just the philosophy, it's this quality of love that devotees have for Krishna that actually attracts him. And this is important because there can be the potential for ego to get there when we have intelligence, right? We think, oh, I can win my way to Krishna with like my mind, and I can study this so thoroughly, and I can know all the verses, and I can show off with my deck of cards, I can say all these verses, which is all very helpful in if we can use it in a helpful way for our sharing of Krishna consciousness. But if it's done in an arrogant way and it's just to show off our intellect, then it's devoid of this real unalloyed love for Krishna, right? So that's really what attracts him. So let's sing this verse here. Yatva gyatva ye vaimam. Yatva gyatva ye vaimam. Yavanyashtasmi Yadrisha Bhajantananya Bhavena Tene Bhaktat Tamamataha. Would someone like to chant it?
Gyatva gyatva thaye vayama Yavanyashtasmi yadrisha Jantiranya bhavena Teme bhakta tamamata Yavigyata yevayama Yavanyashtasmi yadrisha Vajanti anya bhavena Teme bhakta tamamata
Someone else?
Gyatva gyatva taye vaima Yavanyashtasmi yadrisha Ajantyananya bhavena Teme bhakta tamamata
Gyatva and Agyatva, right? Those two together create this first word that you see. Gyatva, Agyatva. So knowing or not knowing, whether I know or not really know where Krishna is coming from or how he is, how he exists, that's not necessary. Of course, it's important. I wanted to, obviously you all know this, but Krishna consciousness is a science, and Prabhupada wanted us to be philosophical. So it is very important to try to understand the quality and nature of Krishna. But Krishna's saying here, that's not the main thing that he's looking for. So my devotees may or may not know exactly what I am, who I am, and how I exist. But if they worship me with unalloyed love, then I consider them to be the best devotees. Oh yeah, and I wanted to point out this verse in Bhagavad Gita, 1855, where it says, Krishna says, Bhaktimam abhijanati yavanyas asmi tatataha. There's similar words here. Tato mam tatato gyatva, so gyatva, remember? Vishate tadanantaram. In this verse he says, only by loving devotion to me does one come to know who I am in truth. Then, having come to know me, my devotee enters into full consciousness of me. So, there's a lot of parallels here. It's really nice. And actually, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna didn't have, in that battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna didn't have that much time to reveal the essence to Arjuna. There was like 30 to 45 minutes, something like that. So he had to give Bhagavad Gita as like one book, right? The essence, and whip it out very quickly. But with Uddhava, he had more time. So the Uddhava Gita is actually like an expanded version of Bhagavad Gita. It's just like broader, deeper, going into more detail. So they work really nicely together to create some parallels with the two. So I'll read the first paragraph. Actually, someone could read this.
According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, although Yavan indicates that Lord Krishna cannot be limited by time or space, he becomes limited by the love of his pure devotees. For example, Lord Krishna never steps at 1 foot out of Vrindavan because of the intense love of its inhabitants for him. In this way, the Lord comes under the control of his devotees' love. The word Yaha indicates that Krishna is the absolute truth, who appears as the son of Vasudeva, or as Shyamasundar. Yadrisha indicates that the Lord is Atmaram, or completely self-satisfied, and also Aptakama, or one who automatically fulfills all of his desires. Still, being affected by the love of his devotees, the Lord sometimes appears to be Anatmaram, or dependent on the love of his devotees, and Anattakama, unable to achieve his desire without the cooperation of his devotees. Actually, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, is always independent, but he reciprocates the intense love of his devotees and thus appears to be dependent on them, just as he apparently became dependent on Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda during his childhood pastimes in Vrindavan. The word agyatva, inexperienced or lacking knowledge, indicates that sometimes a devotee may not have a proper philosophical understanding of the personality of Godhead, or due to love, may temporarily forget the Lord's position. In Bhagavad Gita 11:41, Arjuna says, Saketi matva prasabam yaduktam, he Krishna he Yadava he Saketi, Maya pramada pranayena bhakti. I have in the past addressed you as, O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend, without knowing your glories. Please forgive whatever I may have done in madness or in love. Arjuna's words, ajanata, mahimanam, have the same meaning as Krishna's words, agyatvamam, in this verse of the Bhagavatam. Both indicate incomplete understanding of Krishna's words. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, pranayena, his forgetfulness of Krishna's supreme position was caused by his love for him. In this verse, Krishna excuses such lapses on the part of his devotees with the words agyatvamam, which indicate that even though devotees may not fully appreciate his exalted position, Krishna accepts their loving service.
Okay, you can stop there. Thank you so much. So Krishna excuses such lapses on the part of his devotees. Okay, so he's allowing for us to have a lot of shortcomings. It's okay. You can still come to him even with all of our shortcomings. So that's encouraging. So I wanted to read those three together because Uddhava is saying, how do we recognize the devotee? And because I love you, I have no other shelter than you, so I turn to you with my questions. And then he's saying, you accept many forms because of you're controlled by your devotee's love. And then Krishna responds, by devotees worshiping you with so much unalloyed love that I consider them to be the best devotees, even if they're not perfect. They don't fully understand me. Okay, so that you can see how intimate it is, how Krishna and Uddhava are talking, right? It's just a very sweet conversation. Now, Uddhava had asked Krishna, what are the characteristics of the devotees? How do we know them? How do we recognize them? So, and this is like several verses put together, 29 through 32. And there's a bunch of different, every sentence is a different quality, like the characteristics of a devotee. And I think we'll read this together and we'll reflect on these characteristics in our life. Whenever we read something like this, like a list, I find it helpful because very often the brain will kind of shut down, like when there's a list. It's like too tiring, just kind of go into a lull and just let the words go by. But one thing that's helpful for me when I'm reading any kind of like descriptor or long list is to go in asking the question, which one do I need to work on? What strikes me as an area that is really relevant in my life right now that I need to strengthen? So as we read this, ask yourself that question. Which one of these am I going to focus on maybe this week, or in general, which of these do I struggle with, or which one am I doing pretty good in terms of like, you can also focus on areas that you're doing well in. I mean, it's not like we can also encourage ourselves as well. So I was just thinking about how these kind of opportunities for reflection are there when we do Bhagavatam, and it makes it more personal. It makes it more, especially for Kali Yuga minds, it just makes it stick better when we apply it to our lives. So before we read this, I want to mention that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he said that number 17. So in the purport, we're not going to go through the purport, it's very long, but the purport's broken down like number 1, number 2, number 3, each quality of the Sanskrit words, right? Each of them with a little explanation, and it's very nice if you want to sometimes take this and with your journal, you can journal like which one do I need to work on and some ideas. But number 17, he said, is the most essential. So I'm going to jump to that one and tell you what that is. 17 is Matsharana. You can say that. A devotee does not take pleasure in anything except serving Lord Krishna. So a devotee does not take pleasure in anything except serving Lord Krishna and is constantly attentive in the execution of his duties. A devotee knows that only Lord Krishna can protect him and engage him in useful work. So basically, ultimately, that everything I do and live is Krishna, for Krishna, right? That makes sense that that's the ultimate one and the most important one. However, and Bhaktisiddhanta continues to say that the other qualities will come automatically when this one is there. But I wanted to say that I was thinking about that because it might be easy to feel like I'm going to jump to that one then. I'm just going to jump ahead and I'm going to, a devotee doesn't take pleasure in anything except serving Krishna, and that could lead to kind of a fanatical approach to life, like, just Krishna, don't talk to me about anything, don't tell me about your family, don't tell me about your grandma, just Krishna, 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 right? And sometimes when it's done prematurely, it ends up becoming this sort of a fanatical approach to spiritual life. So what we need to consider is that we can't jump there prematurely. We actually need the help of the other 27 qualities, because in this one there's 28 qualities described. So we actually, even though it's true that yes, when we fully devote ourselves to Krishna, all the other qualities come, it doesn't mean we shouldn't work on the other qualities, because the other qualities will also help others come to Krishna consciousness. Like if we don't work on our character in other ways, then we might just turn people off if we're just super enthusiastic about Krishna but don't have the other qualities there that endear a devotee to others, right? So, okay, so let's do this. Let's read this and think about which one strikes you, which one resonates for you, or which one you want to work on, and then we can have some discussion too about it.
Can I make a comment on
Yeah.
this one too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just that also if you focus on number 17, to the exclusion of everything else, it's unsustainable. So, yeah, so the other qualities are not only there for like preaching and, bringing other people in, but also just to be a balanced person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sustainability is the key to our spiritual life. And yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention about that, jumping to number 17 over the other ones, just like dismissing the other ones, is that idea of often, like you said, it's not sustainable, and then usually we fall, right? So if something's not sustainable, it's like, kind of decline again. You can't sustain this level, so I just drop. And there's that idea of pride comes before the fall. Anybody know where that comes from, that expression?
Bible,
Do you remember which section?
Proverbs.
Who's talking right now? Oh, of course, okay. What's your name?
Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan, yeah, okay. I couldn't see whose mouth was moving. So Proverbs, yes, in the Bible. Yeah, and they, that was something new to me. I hadn't known exactly, because they say that expression all the time, but I looked it up yesterday where it comes from. Proverbs 16:18. So pride cometh before the fall, right? That classic phrase. Yeah. Do you want to use the microphone?
Also in regards to 17, I think it's also nice to remember that it's in regards to Bhakti or exclusive devotion. And we shouldn't throw away the dirty water.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that it is explaining the Bhakti of pure devotion. And that could actually include all others in a healthy form.
Yes.
So yeah, let's not just exclude that. Because it's a very thing that we are striving for.
Yes, exactly. And that's at the beginning of the purport, that's what's described here. Bhaktisiddhanta was saying that taking complete shelter of Krishna is the most important, because ultimately that is the essence. So it's not just a list item, it is the essence. Happens to also be a characteristic, but it's the essence of spiritual life. And so, yeah, we don't want to dismiss it either. Is that what you were saying? Throw that out with the bathwater? Like,
Consider that unsustainable, because
Yeah,
that's the very thing that sustains us.
Yes, exactly. So it's only unsustainable if we're not also working on real practical advancing and through sadhana bhakti and so on. Like if we're jumping ahead to a level that we're not at, and then we're not able to keep it up. So
I'm just also thinking that Prabhupada was in that level, but he had so many conversations, different all over the place. So only if you see everything separate from Krishna, that really doesn't kick in. But if everything is connected to Krishna, which it is, and you see it in that way, and you can utilize it all properly.
Yes, yeah, that's really important. And Mark's one of those. Yeah, there was something in there about seeing everything. Anyway, somewhere in one of these purports, that very thing you said, that devotees see everything in connection to Krishna, and therefore it's not difficult for them to have conversations about things because everything is connected to Krishna. It's not this. It's not as an artificial fragmentation of my spiritual life and then the material world. It becomes more and more, as we mature, more and more that the world, everything we see reminds us of Krishna, and we can find a way to connect to Krishna through everything. Integrated, non-binary. Yeah. Okay, anyway. There was a really nice sentence somewhere that I had seen, maybe it comes later.
So this point about the balance between it is a recurring theme, even in the nectar of instruction, the word model. And so we studied that. It's like rules and regulations, but then neglect of rules and regulations. Also, Madhava did class the other day where he was mentioning about the goal of developing attraction for the message of the Supreme Lord. And if one does their duties and doesn't develop that, then that's a useless waste of time. And then he mentioned all the different categories, etc., including Varnashram. But then he introduced the statement from Bhaktivinoda Thakur in regards to that. So there's a similar statement by Bhaktivinoda Thakur when he writes about Vaidhi and Varnashram. He says that if you neglect it, there will be no signs of devotion. So this is a reoccurring theme where the goal is described, but there's a balance that has to be. And that balance also changes as it will look different for different varnas, and it will look different at different stages of life. So there's a lot to be navigated to maintain that balance, as you mentioned, to make it sustainable.
Yeah, and that's why it's a science that's really important to know how to apply it, right? There's so many nuances, like you said. And ultimately to find that balance, again and again, that's the purpose of spiritual life. To find sustainability through balance. So I did find that place that I was thinking about. So a little bit later, Krishna says to Deva that devotees are able to find him. They can worship me in different ways. They can worship me through these different personalities, and they can worship me in the sun, in fire, in the brahmanas, in cows. You can worship me in the Vaishnavas, sky, wind, water, earth, individual soul, and all living entities. In that purport, it says, to avoid a materialistic conception of Lord Krishna, one should not think that the Lord exists only in a particular time and place. Rather, one should understand that he exists at all times and all places, and that one may search for and find Lord Krishna within all things. So that's helpful. He's telling, it's really nice actually, the section, and the section I got for today is like too big to talk about with everything, but if you want to read some of these verses, Krishna is saying to Deva that you can worship me in these different ways. So one of them is through his devotees. You can worship me within the Vaishnavas by offering loving friendship to them and honoring them in all respects. So even if you take just one item, the other thing about lists, anytime you come across a list, you can feel like, wow, there's so many items, so many things. I gotta see Krishna, the wind and the sun, it's a lot. And some things might not resonate. So just find one thing that you do resonate with, and just applying yourself fully to that one area can be enough to deliver us. Krishna consciousness is so sublime in that way, right? So you can just apply one of the 9 processes of devotional service. You don't necessarily have to apply all 9 if you don't relate to all 9 of them, right? So, yeah, I just wanted to add that. Let's go back to the list of qualities of a devotee. Okay, so what does a devotee look like, the characteristics? And in our devotional life, which ones are ones that we want to work on? So how about we pass the microphone kind of quickly. We'll each read a sentence of this because they're very long, and each sentence is its own unique thing, right? So I'll start with this first. The Supreme Personality of God has said, O Uddhava, a saintly person is merciful and never injures others. Okay, and just pause for a moment. So it's hard because it's like we go to the next one and we don't really hear that one, right? So a saintly person is merciful and never injures others. And if anything comes up for you when you're reading one of them, feel free to raise your hand, okay? So now, yeah.
And others are aggressive, is tolerant, and forgiving to all living beings.
The strength and meaning in life come from the truth itself. He is free from all envy and jealousy, and his mind is equal in material happiness and distress.
There's several in that one, huh? There's like several qualities combined in one sentence. Would you like to start on this side?
Thus, he dedicates his time to work for the welfare of all others.
His intelligence is never bewildered by material desires, and he has control of his senses.
His behavior is always pleasing, never harsh, and always exemplary, and he is free from possessiveness.
He never endeavors in ordinary worldly activities, and he strictly controls his eating.
So are you keeping your mind open to like, hey, how does these apply to me, right? And remember that, see if there's one that sticks out to you for something you'd like to work on, okay?
The vehicle always remains peaceful and steady.
A saintly person is thoughtful and accepts me as his only shelter.
Such a person is very cautious in the execution of his duties and is never subject to superficial transformations because he is steady and noble even in a distressing situation.
He is conquered over the 6 material qualities, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death.
That's a huge one. Can you imagine that? Conquering over those things, so you have no more fear of any of those, no more distress around any of those things.
He is free from all. He is free from all desire for prestige and offers honor to others.
He is expert in reviving the Christian consciousness of others and therefore never cheats anyone.
Rather, he is a well-wishing friend to all, being most merciful.
Such a saintly person must be considered the most learned of men.
Perfectly understands that the ordinary religious duties prescribed by me in the various Vedic scriptures possess favorable qualities that purify the performer, and he knows that his life with such duties constitutes a discrepancy with us.
Having taken shelter at my lotus feet, however, a saintly person ultimately renounces such ordinary religious duties and worships me alone.
He is thus considered to be the best amongst all beings.
Okay, so many wonderful qualities, right? And this applies to men and women. I know it says here, must be considered the most learned of men, meaning persons, people, right? So we're using the male pronoun here, but this can apply to great female devotees as well. So anything strike you? Anything that you like about this list, or you think, wow, that's something I need to work on? If you want to share. All of it, okay? Yes.
So I have a question about if there's some qualities that it's like conquered, what if it was an illusion? So I kind of have two questions. The first question is what is considered illusion? And then the second question is when you say he has conquered over those six material qualities, that he has like fear of them, or what is that?
Yeah, well, in terms of your second question, like Prabhupada actually said that devotees become deathless. It doesn't mean that they don't die or they go through the death or they get diseased or they get hungry, sometimes thirsty, right? These things, sometimes they'll cry. But they're not controlled by them. So he's conquered over them, meaning they're no longer controlling the devotee. The devotee is not being pulled here and there by them. So when death happens, the devotee stays peaceful and kind of even, sober, doesn't get distracted or confused and all these things. These things don't cause confusion. And the other part of your question was about illusion. Illusion, the Sanskrit word for that is maya. And it really means anytime I'm thinking that I'm my body anytime I'm thinking something that's not true, right? So a false sense of self or false sense of this world, thinking this world is permanent, thinking it's important, thinking it's my real home, thinking I'm supreme enjoyer. Anytime we have something that's a thought that's not true, then it's an illusion. And we're caught up in a false story, so to speak, right? So, anybody want to add to that? Yes.
I think of two things. I think of Krishna's statement in the Gita, that whatever you perceive as separate from me, that is my illusory energy. And then that all of these things are bound up, well, you kind of mentioned this already, that these things that one is free from are based on the illusion of the bodily concept. I am my body. So you lose fear of them when you realize that you're not those things.
Yes. It's such a freeing, I'm not speaking from realization necessarily. I'm just saying that, or not even necessarily, I'm not speaking from realization, but imagine what that would be like to not think that you're your body or never to identify with that, be so aware of yourself as a spirit soul that these things don't affect you because they're not affecting the soul. Death doesn't affect the soul. Thirst, hunger, those things don't affect who we really are. They're just affecting our body and mind.
It doesn't mean that we don't take care of the body.
Exactly.
Because it's a vehicle, it's the only thing that we have to operate in this world in, but at the same time, hot, cold, happiness, distress,
yeah.
We become indifferent to them because we have found our satisfaction on this spiritual platform.
Yeah, thank you. What else? Anything else struck you that you liked on the list?
Speaking about the point of number 17 in Krishna shelter, was one of my most guiding verses growing up, like mostly in college, was the verse that shares the attention. Like one was devotion towards Krishna, like all the demigodic qualities, like all those wonderful qualities manifesting in that person. So I feel like that is of the essence, because if that is one's true goal, like the main aim is to take shelter of Krishna. And then all the other qualities that were mentioned here, like is free from envy, jealousy, like it's merciful to others. It's not like you will dismiss those qualities, but you just realize that those qualities, like not being those qualities, don't go hand in hand with taking shelter of Krishna. You cannot be envious of someone or like unkind to someone, and that won't let you be peaceful in your devotion to Krishna. So naturally, like having that as the main focus will help you like cultivate those other qualities.
That's a really good point. Like it's almost motivating. It gives the reason for why we need to develop the other qualities, right? It's like the essence. Yeah. And you mentioned about being like our interactions with others, and I was thinking about number 2. And the purports described, number 2 is akritsa droha. Even if someone is offensive toward a devotee does not become offensive in return. So always staying beneficent or kind to others, not retaliating in anger or those kinds of things. That quality, it says in the translation, even if others are aggressive, the devotee is tolerant and forgiving toward all living entities. So that one feels very, very crucial for reaching number 17, because if you're behaving not in that way, if you're behaving in a way that offends others and being malicious and angry, like that, then it makes it hard. We create offenses, and that makes spiritual life hard. So, and at the same time, one who is dedicated to Krishna, that will start to come automatically. So both things, like we want to work on it, and it will happen automatically as we devote our life to Krishna, that we will start to become more forgiving of others. We'll become more tolerant. So both things, balance. Yes.
I really like this phrase, his strength and meaning of life come from the truth itself. Like that, just that part of the sentence is really nice. I think I get this image of we'll go back to kind of biblical metaphors, right? The wise man built his house upon the rock, the rich man built his house upon the sand. So it's like if your strength and meaning in life, so basically the things that make life worthwhile for you and that give you agency to act in the world. These things are built on the solid foundation of the absolute truth, and you don't have to worry about other things. You don't have to worry that the strength or the meaning in your life are going to disappear. So that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the class. And something Danita was saying that I was remembering that it was described in devotion, subtle collection and compassion collection, primary characteristics of devotion. Subtle collection gives life to all others. Just like in the Buddha, the middle section covers what gives life to both jnana and karma. In that sense, that it said this lower karma gives life improves our lives.
If you think of a sandwich, like you know how we often say what's the best part of the sandwich is the middle, right? When you say the middle part of the pizza, the life of the sandwich, and then around it is the bread filling it. Yeah.
And without it, you have this
Yeah.
How can you claim love for Krishna? Because Krishna is not performing that.
Yeah.
I have a question. It's not regarding the qualities, but it's regarding the quality of Krishna. He was talking about how he's independent. So I'm trying to think of an analogy, and at the same time he likes to reciprocate with devotees and engage. So then I was thinking an analogy to kind of describe my question. So sometimes, like if we're not hungry, we're satisfied, and somebody offers us something, then we will reciprocate it because they're our friend or something, and we just accept it, even though we're not hungry. But at the same time, sometimes we're hungry and we'll take it, right? So then I was thinking, is Krishna, which category does he fall into? Is he independent, satisfied, but at the same time he just accepts because that's just his personality, loving personality? Or is he actually wanting and he's hungry in one sense for his love? Or is it very tough, like he's satisfied but not satisfied?
Yeah.
I'm asking you this because
whenever there's an or question, very often the answer with Krishna is and, both and. Because one time somebody asked Prabhupada, can Krishna create a mountain that he can't lift? Right, like kind of like trying to find a loophole, like, can he create something so heavy that he can't lift it? And the Prabhupada said, yes. and then he'll lift it. So it's because he's so inconceivable. Like, yes, he doesn't need, he is self-sufficient. He doesn't actually need anyone or anything. He's that. And he has that yearning for the love of his devotee. They're both there. They're both present in Krishna. So, but if anyone wants to add to that, please, we'll end with this. Any other comment on that?
It's my understanding that Krishna really needs love. It's my understanding.
Why does he need it?
Krishna is a supreme enjoyer, so he's a supreme personalist, he's a supreme lover, right? So he has that need to fulfill those characteristics of himself. He wants to have loving relationships because that's one of his characteristics. If he wasn't a supreme enjoyer or supreme lover, then he wouldn't, no, but he's a supreme everything, so therefore he has all those as well. Like we do, but in an unlimited extent, which is how he's a supreme enjoyer at an unlimited level. We can supremely enjoy one plate maybe, in that moment, one pizza slice or something, but Krishna can do it unlimitedly forever, and therefore he's able to reciprocate with every living entity forever, because he's supremely reciprocal and enjoying the living entities. If he wasn't like that, then it would be kind of unfortunate for us, because he wouldn't. Imagine if Krishna didn't need our love or didn't necessarily want our love, then we would all be stuck here. He wouldn't be helping us actively in our heart. Come on,
That's his whole reason for existing.
Yeah.
Is to enjoy bliss. What is consequence is to enjoy bliss, and enjoy it in association with people.
Yeah, we're also parts and partials of Krishna. So it's not like there's anything really that separate from Krishna. Krishna's energies are all part of him too. So it's incredibly beyond our imagination kind of, I can't comprehend it, but that's what I'm saying. It's incomprehensible from our little tiny perspective to understand.
My brother gives this example of a pinky. The pinky is separated. That's such a small thing.
Yeah.
So, pinky. So what is the value of separated pinky? You wouldn't like your pinky separated. Your body can function still, but you wanted your pinky to be in the right place. And that way, no matter how insignificant you are, so Krishna cares. He's gathering lots of you.
Yeah. Thank God for Krishna.
Because it's part of us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good that he cares about us so much, right? Because it makes each one of us want to practice our spiritual life. Because if it was like kind of hit or miss, like I'm not sure if Krishna really cares about me, he seems to care about those, but luckily we're all covered in that. We're all cared for by Krishna. Thank you for that analogy, it's really great. So now we've run over a little, so we'll have breakfast. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.